Hello everyone, welcome back to UK Fat Man. Really appreciate all the support that you've given me over the past couple of years since I've been doing some videos. I've had a bit of a lull period, it has to be said, just due to family commitments. But this video is something that, I don't know, I've been wanting to look at and wanting to do over the past 6 months or so since I did my Stanley Kubrick video. I'll leave a link in the description below. Stanley Kubrick filmed at Beckton Gas Works, which is just down the road from where this disaster happened. And sometimes you go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole, and when I was researching the video that I did on Full Metal Jacket, I came across a disaster that I'd never heard of, and since I've heard of it and told other people about it, they've never heard of. And I really think it needs some exposure, it needs some explanation as to what happened. And yeah, so this is the video. This is the Princess Alice disaster, a disaster which happened in 1878, a paddle steamer leaving from central London, population of about 4.1 million people, horrific living conditions, people just trying to get away for a day, away from the dirt and the grime and the grunge of central London. And what people did was they paid 1-2 shillings to go to places like Essex and Kent and take their children away even just for one day, a slight respite. But on this occasion, that trip that they took turned to absolute disaster. So here we are in Swan Lane. Now, Swan Lane leads to Swan Pier, obviously, and that was where the Princess Alice departed on that fateful day for that journey down to Kent, to Rocherville Gardens, full of 1,000 women, mainly women and children, some men, some dads, getting away from London. And London's clearly changed a lot. You can see behind me the buildings. It would have looked a lot different back in the late 1800s, but I can imagine the horses and carriages pulling up and coming down this lane to drop off their precious cargo, ready for the trip down the Thames for a journey that costs 2 shillings to get away from London just for a day, get that fresh air of the Kent and Essex coastline and the lush green lands that was going to replace the dirt and the grime and the stench and the smell of London at the time. So imagine, if you can, that day. Maybe it was these gates here that the women and children clambered up onto. I think they are formerly known as the Swan Steps. But there's steps down there. And there's articles written back in the day of Swan Steps and how merchant seamen would come up to London and use Swan Steps to board boats. And this is where there'd be no doubt be a gantry leading up to a walkway leading up to the Princess Alice. That would have been moored on this now derelict pier. And the pier's been derelict since the 2000s, late 2000s. There's been talk recently of the pier being reinstated, and having the Thames Clipper boats and the Uber boats that regularly come up and down the Thames, stopping off here at Swan Pier. The nearest pier is just down there at Tower Bridge. A lot of people you can just see underneath is the famous Tower Bridge. A lot of tourists get it confused with London Bridge, which actually, the original London Bridge is now in Lake Havasu and got transported there brick by brick. It's now a bit of a tourist attraction. But this is where the Princess Alice set sail on that fateful day in the late 1800s. And the women and children excitedly been brought down by coaches and horses down Swan Lane to embark on a journey. And a journey of initial joy and excitement, but a journey that led ultimately to tragedy and a very, very tragic end of so many lives. And here we have a modern pleasure cruiser travelling up the Thames, city cruise up the Thames, no doubt much safer, no doubt with very clear understanding and knowledge about how many passengers and probably the names and addresses of the passengers that are on board. Nothing like the Princess Alice that had no indication. They think 1,000 passengers, but they had no indication of the exact numbers of the passengers on the Princess Alice that day, or the names or the addresses of the people that boarded that fateful voyage. And as I say, there's the steps. I believe there's an article, hopefully I can find it, articles written of certain Victorian and other kind of historic events that happened here at Swan Steps leading to Swan Lane. So here I am, down in River Road, embarking. Now, this place is very industrial, smells a bit. Even in 2022, it stinks. And it's grimy, it's just factories, trucks going past constantly, vans, got recycling places up there on the road. I'm about 19 miles away from upstream, shall we say, of the Thames, upstream from where I live in Essex, which is over here in that direction. And I've come here because I wanted to get as close as I possibly could to the site of the collision, the actual collision of the Princess Alice.
steamer, and it's a Saturday morning, so you'll have to kind of use your imagination a little bit, because the Princess Alice left Kent at about 6:30 p.m. and as you can imagine, it'd been a long day. They'd left Swan Pier in central London. It'd been a long day, and the kids were tired. If you imagine the parents, the wives, the mothers, getting their kids back on board the Princess Alice for the return journey back to London. And I can imagine, you know, there's 1,000 people getting back onto the Princess Alice. The kids are tired, they've been running around the park. They've had that, you know, fresh air and the energy and excitement of being out in green open spaces, away from the grime and the dirt and the hustle and bustle of that city of London that they'd come from, up the Thames to Kent and to Essex. And many of them went down below. You know, they weren't on top of the deck, out in the open. They went down below, huddled together. The kids were sleeping. The mothers were dozing. The dads were probably looking forward to a well-earned hot toddy, a whiskey, or something like that when they got home after spending the day out on the Princess Alice. And you can see here this small park surrounded by, well, to be honest with you, broken bottles, it's a shame, and rubbish. Someone's had a good party, a little barbecue. The Princess Alice left Rocherville Gardens about 6:30 p.m. Came upstream to this point here, over on that side in Kent, Tripcock Point. And the Princess Alice travelled up towards the penultimate destination, just up there, round this bend. They would come in sight of Woolwich, the Woolwich Pier, where many of the tired and weary passengers were due to disembark. But towards them came a coal steamer called the Bywell Castle. It just left Millwall and it was headed to Egypt, loaded with coal. And as the Bywell Castle approached Galleon's Reach, they saw Princess Alice's red port light approaching on a course to pass them starboard, which is to their left, basically. Now, Princess Alice's captain, Grinstead, travelling up the river against the tide, seemed to follow normal procedures. You know, everything seemed to be fine. He seemed to be doing everything right. But he altered the ship's course for some reason, altering the course, and basically brought the Princess Alice directly into the path of the Bywell Castle. Seeing a collision was imminent, Captain Grinstead shouted to the larger vessel, "Where are you coming to? Good God, where are you coming to?" And whilst the Bywell Castle tried to manoeuvre out of the way, it was too late. Princess Alice was struck at an angle of 13 degrees and split in two and sank within 4 minutes. But before we go on and talk about the disaster in a bit more detail, the disaster's bad enough, right? The Princess Alice is sinking just behind me. It's going to sink in 4 minutes. And before we talk about the aftermath, got to go back just 1 hour. And when I was talking earlier I explained how badly polluted the River Thames was, how dirty and grimy London was at the time. And just 1 hour before the Princess Alice came up and collided with the Bywell Castle just behind me, just 1 hour before, 75 million gallons of raw sewage had just been pumped into the Thames. 75 million gallons. And that was the second set of 75 million. So earlier in the day, 75 million gallons, and just an hour before, another 75 million gallons of raw shit. Stinking, fermenting sewage had just been pumped into the Thames. The Abbey Mills pumping station pumped this stream, this torrent of raw sewage into the Thames, right where the Bywell Castle hit Princess Alice, splitting her in two. You've got your industrial, chemical plants, and they also were pumping out the byproducts of that industrial activity that they were undertaking. I mean, let's face it, they didn't drown in water. These poor souls, these wretched souls, they didn't drown in water. They drowned in sewage. They drowned in chemicals and acid and all manner of horrible, dirty, grimy stuff. It wasn't water. These people didn't drown in water. Can you imagine the horrific deaths that these people experienced? And what's really sad is, as I said, most of the women and children below decks, probably asleep, didn't even know, had no idea. And within minutes, they'd sunk to the bottom, drowning in shit, drowning in toxic waste. And you know, apparently even the women that were on top deck, even the women that were on the top deck, out in the open, you know, probably taking in the evening air and looking forward to getting to bed. Even the women on the top deck, because of the dresses and the fashion at the time, even the women pretty much sank down, dragged to the bottom of that filthy, disgusting water. Dragged to the bottom. Well, I've been walking around for ages trying to find this plaque. The memorial plaque. And I can't find it anywhere. Which I'm really disappointed about. Because I'm just going to try up here. Because it really does seem like a real shame. You know, I didn't even know about this disaster. I live in the area, live quite local, I would say. I used to live just a little bit further down, upstream in East Ham. And I didn't even know until I did my video about Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, filmed just up the river. I'd never even heard of it. I can't remember how I came to find out about it. I think there was, when I was on Wikipedia, or, you know, you kind of sometimes go down a Wikipedia rabbit hole. When I was doing some research for that video, I just came across this thing, the Princess Alice disaster, and I never even heard of it. So many people losing their lives, and, you know, on your doorstep and you don't even know about it. but I was hoping to find the plaque. I was hoping to find the memorial plaque. Oh, hang on. Oh, hey. Could this be it? I think it is. There you go. Princess Alice Memorial. You see that? The Princess Alice Memorial. Oh, I'm glad I found it. In memory of all those who lost their lives in the tragic sinking of the Princess Alice paddle steamer off Creekmouth on the 3rd of September 1878. Also with grateful remembrance of the residents of Creekmouth village who helped the rescue attempts. Approximately 700 people lost their lives in the disaster. May they all rest in peace. May they all rest in peace. There you go. We found it. But it does seem rather, can I say, pathetic? No, I mean it's great. I mean it's great. So there's anything, and you know, hats off to the people that put this memorial in. But you can't just help thinking that perhaps so many people deserve a little better. And obviously things have changed. There's a cruiser heading upriver, an Uber boat. Think that is heading towards Tilbury. Just down the road from where I live and where I did another video about Wonder Woman, where Wonder Woman was filmed, which I will also leave a description, so that was handy.